I worked 3 jobs in Lagos for 5 years, but I never expected my kindness would expose the biggest theft in my family's history. What started as cleaning up after an art auction became the discovery that would bring my father's stolen legacy back home and connect my heart to someone 7,000 miles away. You have no business touching those artifacts. Mr. Adebayo's voice thundered across the empty auction hall, his heavy footsteps echoing as he stormed toward me. The Lagos Art Gallery felt suffocating after hours, with only the dim security lights casting long shadows across the marble floors. I stood frozen beside the display case, my cleaning cloth still in hand, staring at the carved wooden mask that had stopped my heart cold. "I wasn't touching anything, sir," I replied quietly, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I was just cleaning around the cases." The dozen remaining auction attendees turned to stare, their whispered conversations dying as they sensed the tension building between us. Some pulled out phones, others stepped closer, drawn to the drama unfolding before them. "Don't lie to me, Chioma," he snapped, pointing an accusing finger at my face. "I saw you staring at that piece like you wanted to steal it." "I would never steal anything," I said firmly, meeting his gaze without flinching. I was just surprised by how familiar it looked. The watching crowd murmured among themselves, sensing something bigger was happening than a simple workplace confrontation. Mr. Adebayo's face reddened with embarrassment at the public challenge to his authority. But what I said next made everyone freeze. "That mask belonged to my grandfather," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. "It has a crack on the left temple where he dropped it when I was 7, and there's a specific prayer carved inside the mouth that only family members would know." The auction hall fell completely silent. Dr. Emeka, the elderly art appraiser who'd been cataloging pieces near the entrance, slowly approached our heated exchange, his expert eyes suddenly alert with professional curiosity. "What did you just say?" Dr. Emeka interrupted, his voice cutting through the tension as he hurried over. "You know the provenance of this piece?" Adebayo waved him off dismissively. "She's just a cleaning girl, doctor. She's probably trying to scam us somehow." "The prayer inside," I continued, ignoring Mr. Adebayo's attempts to silence me. "It says, Chukwu gozie ani na ebe ani na aga, God bless us and where we're going. My father used to whisper it every morning." Dr. Emeka's eyebrows shot up in amazement. He immediately pulled out a small flashlight and peered inside the mask's mouth, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he examined the intricate carvings. "Extraordinary," he whispered, then looked up at me with new respect. "How could you possibly know this? These pieces were acquired from a private collector in Seoul. The entire collection was sold by—" He pulled out his auction catalog, flipping through pages rapidly. "Kim Min-jun from Seoul, South Korea." My breath caught in my throat. Seoul? Korea? What possible connection could my father's artifacts have to someone in Korea? The questions swirled in my mind as I stared at the name printed clearly in the catalog. Little did I know that name would change my life forever. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mother lay in the next room, her labored breathing a constant reminder of why I worked 3 jobs. Her medical bills consumed every naira I earned. But tonight, my mind raced with possibilities I'd never dared imagine. I spent hours on my ancient laptop searching for Kim Min-jun Seoul Art Gallery. The slow internet connection tested my patience, but finally his website loaded. Hanul Gallery, specializing in African and Asian cultural artifacts. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the collection page. There, displayed in pristine gallery lighting, were dozens of pieces I recognized from my childhood. The bronze leopard my father used to let me polish. The ivory elephant that sat on our family shrine. The wooden bowls my grandmother served special meals in during festivals. All of them, supposedly thousands of miles away in Korea. With shaking fingers, I composed an email to the gallery. "Dear Mr. Kim, I believe you have a collection that belonged to my family. I can provide specific details about the provenance and cultural significance of each piece that only the original owners would know. My father was Emeka Akwu, and these artifacts have been passed down through our family for generations. Please contact me. I think there's been a terrible mistake." I attached photos from my childhood, including one of my father and me standing proudly beside the family shrine, surrounded by the very artifacts now displayed on this Korean gallery's website. 3 days later, I received a response that changed everything. Dear Miss Okwu, your email has deeply disturbed me. I inherited this collection from my mentor, Professor Choi, who passed away 2 years ago. He told me these pieces were donated to him during his research in Nigeria in the 1990s. If what you say is true, I need to understand how this happened. Can we arrange a video call? Min-jun. The truth was about to get much bigger. If this story of lost inheritance crossing continents is gripping you, wait until you see how fate connects them. The video call connected at exactly 3 p.m. Lagos time, 9 p.m. in Seoul. The screen flickered, and suddenly I was face to face with Min-jun. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes that carried a weight of concern. Miss Okwu, he began in careful English, thank you for agreeing to this call. I must admit, your email has kept me awake for days. Behind him, I could see the clean white walls of his gallery, and there, my breath caught, hanging on the wall was my great-grandmother's ceremonial headpiece, the one she'd worn on her wedding day. That's her, I whispered, pointing at the screen. That's my great-grandmother's icy agu headpiece. She made it herself from peacock feathers and gold thread she saved for years to buy. Min-jun turned to look at the piece, then back at me with growing unease. Professor Choi told me this came from a village donation ceremony. Now, he said the families were eager to share their culture with Korean researchers. I laughed bitterly, tears starting to blur my vision. Donation? My father died in 1995, Mr. Kim. We were drowning in medical debt, and suddenly all our family treasures just disappeared. My mother was too grief-stricken to notice until it was too late. 1995, Min-jun repeated slowly, his face paling. That's exactly when Professor Choi returned from his Nigeria research trip. He came back with this entire collection. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and neither of us liked the picture they formed. Min-jun ran his hands through his hair, clearly distressed by the implications of what we were discovering. Chioma, he said softly, using my first name for the first time, I think we've both been victims of something terrible. But the real shocking truth was still hidden. Over the next 2 weeks, we worked together across time zones to uncover the truth. Min-jun searched through Professor Choi's personal effects, which he'd inherited along with the collection. I combed through my father's old papers, many of which my mother had kept in a trunk she rarely opened. Our breakthrough came simultaneously. Min-jun found a folder hidden behind false backing in one of Professor Choi's desk drawers. Inside were forged documents claiming the artifacts were cultural donations, signed by people whose names meant nothing to him but everything to me. Neighbors who'd moved away decades ago, distant relatives who'd never owned any of these pieces. At the same time, I discovered letters my father had written but never sent, hidden in his old medical textbooks. One was addressed to Professor Kim Choi, and dated just weeks before my father's death. Professor, I understand you appreciate our cultural heritage, but I cannot sell our family treasures. These pieces carry the souls of our ancestors. I know you offered good money, and God knows we need it for my treatment, but some things cannot be bought. Please respect our decision. When Min-jun and I shared our discoveries on our next video call, the truth hit us both like a physical blow. Professor Choi hadn't accepted my father's refusal. He'd waited until my father died, then approached my grieving, overwhelmed mother with forged papers and official-looking documentation, claiming the donation had already been arranged. He stole them, Min-jun said quietly, his voice thick with shame. My mentor, the man I respected most in the world, was a thief, and my mother was too broken to fight a man with official papers and a university position, I replied, wiping away tears. She probably thought Papa had arranged it before he died. We sat in silence for a long moment, both processing the weight of this betrayal. Finally, Min-jun spoke. Chioma, I'm flying to Lagos. These artifacts belong to you, and I'm going to make sure you get them back. What happened when they finally met would shock them both. 3 weeks later, Murtala Muhammad International Airport buzzed with its usual chaos, but I stood in the arrivals area feeling like I was about to meet destiny itself. When Min-jun emerged from customs, wheeling several large crates behind him, our eyes met across the crowded space, and something electric passed between us. "You actually came," I said softly as he approached, still hardly believing this Korean man had traveled 7,000 miles to right a wrong done before we'd ever met. "I gave you my word," he replied simply, but his eyes held depths I hadn't seen through our video calls. The next morning, we stood together in the Lagos National Museum, surrounded by media cameras and cultural dignitaries. Dr. Aduni Ogundumu, the museum director, had organized a public repatriation ceremony after learning our story. "Ladies and gentlemen," Min-jun addressed the gathered crowd, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "I stand before you today to return stolen Nigerian heritage to its rightful owners. My mentor, Professor Choi, deceived both the Oku family and myself. These artifacts were never donations. They were taken from a grieving family during their darkest hour." The cameras flashed as he gestured to the carefully displayed collection. 37 pieces spanning 3 generations of my family's history. The estimated value, according to the museum's experts, was over 2 million naira. "This collection," I said, my voice growing stronger as I spoke, "represents more than monetary value. These pieces carry the prayers of my ancestors, the celebrations of my childhood, and the cultural identity that was stolen from my family 28 years ago." The audience erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. I was watching Min-jun, seeing how his act of integrity had transformed him from a gallery owner into a bridge between cultures, a healer of historical wounds. But fate had one more surprise waiting. That evening, Min-jun and I walked along Tarkwa Bay Beach, the weight of the day's emotions settling between us like evening mist. The artifacts were now safely secured in the museum's vault, and tomorrow we would begin the legal process of transferring ownership back to my family. "You don't have to go back to Seoul immediately," I said quietly, surprising myself with my boldness. "I mean, if you wanted to stay longer, there's so much more Nigerian culture you could learn about properly this time." He stopped walking and turned to face me, the sunset painting golden highlights in his dark hair. "Chioma, I've been thinking about that. What if I didn't go back at all?" My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if we turn this story into something bigger, a cultural exchange program, maybe based here in Lagos? We could help other families recover stolen heritage, facilitate proper cultural sharing between Korea and Nigeria." The idea sent excitement coursing through my veins. With the inheritance money from the collection's sale, I could finally afford to study art preservation, something I'd dreamed about but never thought possible. "Are you saying you want to stay in Nigeria?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. "I'm saying I want to stay wherever you are," he replied softly, reaching out to take my hand. "This journey brought me to you, Chioma. That can't be coincidence." As his fingers intertwined with mine, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the ugliest truths. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you never knew you were looking for. The ending would inspire thousands. 6 months later, I stood in the newly opened Oku Kim Cultural Heritage Center, watching Min-jun guide a group of Korean art students through our exhibition on Reclaimed Legacies, Stories of Cultural Recovery. My mother, healthy again thanks to the medical treatment we could finally afford, sat behind the reception desk, greeting visitors in her limited but enthusiastic Korean. The inheritance money had not only secured our family's future, but funded this center that was already making international headlines. "You know," Min-jun said, as he joined me after the tour, slipping his arm around my waist in the gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Professor Choi thought he was preserving culture by taking it. He never understood that culture lives in the hands and hearts of its people, not in museum cases." I leaned into his embrace, watching as a young Nigerian artist demonstrated traditional bronze casting techniques to fascinated Korean visitors. Maybe his theft led to something beautiful after all. Our center has helped 12 families recover stolen artifacts in just 6 months. 13, Min-jun corrected with a smile. The email came in this morning. A family in Enugu found photos of their grandfather's ceremonial drums in a German museum catalog. The afternoon sun streamed through our windows, illuminating the carefully curated displays that told stories of loss, recovery, and connection. Each piece in our collection had found its way home, just as Min-jun and I had found our way to each other. Our story had become proof that justice delayed isn't justice denied, that love can bloom from the ashes of injustice, and that sometimes the most precious inheritance isn't what our ancestors left us, it's what we choose to build together. As visitors from both Korea and Nigeria mingled in our space, sharing stories and learning from each other, I realized we'd created something Professor Choi never could have imagined. A place where cultures met as equals, where heritage was celebrated rather than stolen, and where love transcended every boundary that narrow minds try to build. The boy who'd inherited stolen dreams had given them back and found something infinitely more valuable in return. And the girl who'd lost her father's legacy had discovered that some things, love, justice, and hope, can never truly be taken away. They simply wait for the right moment to return home.